Hello, we are moving into a new chapter in fundamental rights, that is right against exploitation, and there are two articles, and I will be specifically talking about article 23, prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor. So, this particular video is on article 23, that is prohibition of traffic in human beings. Prohibition in traffic in human beings and forced labor. So, just for your convenience, let me just remind you, we are in the chapter of fundamental rights and we talked about 6 groups of fundamental rights. The first group is right to equality. The second one was right to liberty, and the most important and the most fundamental of all the fundamental rights. The third is right against exploitation, and in that right against exploitation we are going to talk about article 23. The fourth, right to religion. Fifth, the rights of minorities or the cultural and educational rights, and the sixth is the constitutional remedies, article 32. So, in this video I will be specifically talking about right against exploitation, and in that article 23 is my focus. So, prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor. So, traffic in human being and forced labor are prohibited, and any contravention of this provision shall be an offence punishable in accordance with the law. So, traffic in human beings and forced labor is a punishable offence. Now, what is traffic in human being? That is the next question. So, it is a part of exploitation. Let me just put it this way, it is a part of exploitation. And when you talk about traffic in human beings, it is nothing but selling and buying men and women like goods. Traffic means selling and buying men and women like goods, and includes immoral traffic in women and children. It also, this traffic also includes, it includes immoral traffic in women and children. In women and children. So, immoral traffic in women and children are also included. So, it also prohibits this traffic in human beings and forced labor. That means the second part is forced labor. It also prohibits making a person to render service. So, you cannot force a person to, cannot force a person to render service, where he is lawfully entitled not to work or receive remuneration for the service rendered by him. I mean, if he is lawfully entitled not to work and not to receive any remuneration, and you cannot force a person to do that. And there are, there are, that means there are 2-3 more points in this. So, you cannot force. So, one is you cannot buy and sell human beings like any other goods. You cannot indulge in immoral activities, especially of women and children. Number 3, cannot force a person to render service if he is legally entitled not to work. And also that means a third point I would like to, or a fourth point we can say here is, a person cannot be forced to do any labor or service even if remuneration is paid. So, that is a very important component. Even if remuneration is paid, a person cannot be forced, to render service. So, this is very important. So, you cannot claim, or rather nobody can claim and say that I paid him salary, so he should do the work. No. So, even if you are giving salary, we cannot force a person to do. And another point is, if the remuneration is less than the minimum wages, is the remuneration is less than the minimum wages, the minimum wages are prescribed by the respective state government in each state, that also will come under the forced labor. Okay, even if the remuneration is less than the minimum wages prescribed by the state government, then it will come under the forced labor under Article 23. But there is an exception. So, there is an exception to Article 23. What is the exception? The state can force a person to do service to these on behalf of the society or other. The state can force a person to render service. The state can force any citizen to render service, and even if remuneration is not paid or even if it is paid, there is the state can always do that. So, there is an exception to Article 23. It's not an absolute right. There is an exception, that means the state can force a person to render service for the common good, for the society. That is always possible. So, that is about Article 23. So, two big things are there in Article 23. First point is the prohibition of traffic in human beings, that is buying and selling men and women, and number two is we cannot force a person to do any service, render any service, even if remuneration is paid, if that person is legally entitled not to work. And if minimum wages are not paid, so naturally, which is prescribed in the by the state government, then that also will amount to forced labor. Now, coming to within this concept, there is another point we should know is Article 23 specifically prohibits bonded labor or forced labor or begar or bandhua. See, that is some of the terms which are used in in Hindi, begar or bandhua, forced labor. So, in this bonded labor issue, now coming to, I would like to speak specifically about the bonded labor issue in India. It's a social tragedy again. It's a I will say it's a social evil. It is still prevalent in our country despite the fact that we are almost approaching 75 years of our independence. So, there is no independence for a large section of our society who are still working as bonded laborers. This bonded labor or the debt bondage is a relic of the feudal hierarchical society. This bonded labor, or this debt labor is a relic of the feudal system or the feudal hierarchical society. Feudal hierarchical society, which continues to prevail in our society even after or even almost 75 years of our independence. And what is the bonded labor can be in the nature of child bondage also. There can be various forms of bonded labor in our country. There are child bondages, then loyalty bondage through land allotment. Land is allotted by the feudal setup and they are forced to work in that land only, that is called loyalty bondage through land allotment. Or even called intergenerational bondage, because a great grandfather took some money from a money lender and he became a bonded laborer and he continues to work till his death, and then his son, then his grandson, like that many generations are continuing to do the bonded labor because some of their forefathers took some money or they got bonded and they are continuing to work and pay back the debt. It is called intergenerational bondage. So, one is child bondages, children are sold. Number two, the loyalty bondage through land allotment, and number three, which we call it as intergenerational bondage. Intergenerational bondage. So, what is this? The system of bondage, the bonded labor it is though totally incompatible with an egalitarian democratic society. It is 100%. Now, next point I would like to say, it is 100% incompatible. It's almost like slavery. It is a version of slavery. It is 100% incompatible with a modern democratic or with an egalitarian democratic society. It is 100% incompatible with an egalitarian democratic society. So, this bonded labor is probably the least known form of slavery, or rather it is below, behind the curtain, or it is not in the surface. It is below the surface, I will say, and it is still prevalent. It is the least known form of slavery, we can definitely say. So, a person becomes a bonded labor. So, what is the meaning of that bonded labor? So, what can be the definition of a bonded labor? We can say a person becomes a bonded labor when their labor is demanded as a means of repayment for a loan. When their labor is demanded as a means of repayment for a loan. This is very important. So, you are you are doing your labor, or labor is demanded as a means of repayment of a loan. The loan which you have taken, or maybe your forefather, the loan which you have taken, you are repaying by working and by rendering service, by doing labor. So, this person is then tricked and trapped into working for very little or no pay. They may be given only food and they are forced to work. And normally these are happening. See, in our in our society, especially the tribal societies, in the poor societies, we are very most of us are religiously inclined people. And when it comes a death ritual or a marriage or a childbirth, so death ritual, marriages and childbirth. So, these are the instances where because of our religious nature of the society, because of the religiously inclined people, most people are forced to spend some money on one or other ritual. Especially the death rituals are very elaborate in our country, and not only in India, almost every religion. Death ritual is the most elaborate ritual of any religion for that matter. Even among the tribal societies, among the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, or any society for that matter, death rituals are very important. So, during that time, this when a subsistence economy, when people are still surviving, or rather when we are following a subsistence economy, there is no surplus for most of these poor laborers or working class. So, they are forced to take some loan during such cases. Most of the bonded laborers or most of the people who ended up as bonded laborers are those who took some loan for either during a death, or for a death ritual, or a marriage function, or during a childbirth. So, whatever little loan is taken, that loan is, and the interest rates are so high, they are not able to repay the loan even after working in the fields of that money lender for the whole generation. Maybe a couple of generations are working. There are many instances. I was reading an article about bonded labor in Orissa, and it was found that a person took 100 rupees loan many years before. Maybe 100 rupees is a big amount at that time maybe, but to repay that 100 rupees, 3 generations of the family worked in the field of that that money lender, and still they were not able to pay back the loan according to the books of the money lender. So, this is normally the bonded labor begins by taking loan, and most of the time this loan was taken because of a death ritual, or a death in the family, or a marriage in the family, or a childbirth in the family. Ultimately, they are trapped into this, trapped and tricked into this kind of a bonded labor. Now, a couple of statistics, even though we do not have clear statistics in India, officially we say that there is no bonded labor in our country. In 78, 79, in 1978, 79, and various NGOs estimated that over 2.6 million bonded laborers in India. Okay, in a survey conducting, in 10 states, they conducted a survey in 10 states and found that 2.6 million. In 1995, after a Supreme Court case, and it was found that around 1.25 million bonded laborers in Tamil Nadu alone. And according to the Human Rights Watch, a famous international human rights organization, Human Rights Watch, approximately 15 million children in India are bonded laborers. Okay. So, that is a figure a bit old, 15 million children might be bonded laborers. But in many states, especially states like Kerala, where land reforms have been implemented by a law, bonded labor has been virtually abolished, eliminated. But there are many states in our country, especially states like, say, Gujarat, then then Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, then Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. These are all states where bonded labor is still prevalent, where large portions of land are still held by families who practice this feudal setup, and bonded laborers are still there. So, this is something which is going on in our country, and we do not have a proper data. Officially, the district magistrates declare that there is no bonded labor in a particular district, but very easy to declare officially, but unofficially things are totally different. Millions of people are still bonded by one or other way. Millions, not just one or two people in our country, millions are involved in it. Millions are subject to such inhuman treatment. This is a form of slavery which is still practiced in India, which we cannot ignore. Let us come to the legislative measures, or rather the law. What are the provisions in the law, or is there any law against the bonded labor? Yes, Article 23, of course, we know very well. Article 23 of the Constitution mandates the state to enact a law to prohibit traffic and practicing of the forced labor. So, Article 23 is there. So, others Article 23. Then, not only that, India also ratified the ILO, International Labour Organization Convention number 29. Convention number 29. India has already ratified the ILO Convention number 29 against the forced labor in 1954. Of course, this convention was in 1930, but India ratified it in 1954. Please do not forget, India ratified the convention number 29 of the against the forced labor in 1954. Similarly, in 1976, very important. So, one is the Article 23, then 1954 we ratified the ILO Convention against forced labor, and most importantly in 1976, that is a landmark year against the bonded labor, the Parliament finally enacted the Bonded Labor System Abolition Act. In 1976, the Parliament enacted the Bonded Labor System Abolition Act. Bonded Labor System Abolition Act 1976, abolishing the bonded labor system in all forms. And it has specifically in the 1976 Act, it has specifically mentioned that it is a duty of the district magistrate to inquire about the prevalence of any bonded labor. It is a duty. It is the duty of the district magistrate to inquire about prevalence of bonded labor, any bonded labor system within the district, about bonded labor within the district, and eradicate the same if it is found. It is the according to according to 1976 law, it is the duty of the district magistrate to inquire about the prevalence and eradicate the same. But the problem in our country, the law is very clear, district magistrate should eradicate, and they will even report saying that there is no bonded labor in the district. But the reality is there is a clear lack of political will It is convenient for everybody. Political will and accountability of the executive. There is a clear lack of political will and accountability of the executive. No doubt regarding this. And that is why this act is more like a paper tiger. It has not been implemented properly. And it is the duty of the government, it is the duty of the district magistrate. District magistrate represents the government. It is the duty of the government to identify and rehabilitate the bonded laborers according to this act. But since the district magistrate himself is so busy because of the time constraint and there is no social pressure on him, because it is convenient. See, there has to be a people's movement. See, please understand that bonded labor. Now, my argument, this is the important point we should know. Bonded labor is a social evil. Bonded labor is a social evil. This social evil can be fought only by the society. Law alone cannot eliminate it. See, untouchability is a social evil. Law alone cannot eliminate untouchability. Child marriage is a social evil. Dowry is a social evil. These social evils can be eliminated only if the whole society is involved. There has to be a movement by everyone. Law alone, police cannot do this, or the district administration alone cannot do it. There has to be law. Law should be there, but law alone is not going to stop this social evil. It's like dowry. It's like child marriages. It's like untouchability. It's like discrimination. These things can be fought only if the whole society, if everybody participates. See, the whole society knows who is a bonded labor, who is not a bonded labor. The village knows who all are working under whom, and are they given salary, are they paid anything, everything everybody knows. But why are we not able to implement and eradicate it? Because it is a convenience for everyone. The educated, the landed class, it is convenient for them. The poor, they may not be knowing their rights. There is a, nobody is interested, or rather, if at all somebody is interested, they are not allowed to educate and, educate these people to know about their rights also. So, there is a, I will say, the collusion of the whole society, one or other way. The administration, the landed class, the political class, the influential people, all are colluding themselves not to implement this kind of an act. So, the end result is bonded labor is still continues, and the district magistrates conveniently write and say that there is not enough, or there is no bonded labor in their district. And even there is a rehabilitation bonded labor scheme, even as as recent as 2016. As per the central sector, in a central scheme for the rehabilitation of bonded labor. See, even today we are talking about rehabilitation of bonded labor. That means bonded labor is still there. And the central, according to the central scheme, 3 lakh rupees will be given as assistance, is provided to release to the bonded laborers, along with other non-cash assistance for their livelihood. So, to release a financial assistance to the extent of 3 lakh rupees per bonded labor is permitted under central scheme. Also, the Ministry of Labour, it talks about a central almost 20,000 rupees is provided for rehabilitation. So, there are multiple schemes going on under the Ministry of Labour also, and in general. So, there are multiple schemes going on up to 3 lakh rupees according to a 2016 scheme. Up to 3 lakh rupees will be spent for rehabilitation of the bonded labor. That means even now, after 70 years of independence, or almost 75 years of independence, we are still talking about bonded labor. It is the worst form of, it is one form of slavery, we can say. It is the gravest injustice to the rights of the people. Article 23 talks about prohibition of human trafficking and bonded labor and forced labor. That is what is talked about, but when it comes to implementation, its results are not that encouraging. Law is there, 1976 Act is there, we have signed the ILO convention in 1954 itself against the forced labor. Article 23 is a constitutional right there, but still forced labor is going on, bonded labor is going on, millions of people are still suffering. So, independence have no meaning for such people. India got independent 75 years before or 74 years before, whatever we, more than 70 years before. But there are so many citizens, they are all supposed to be equal citizens of this country. They are still suffering and they are not getting their rights. So that is the situation as far as Article 23 is concerned. We have miles to go before we can sleep as far as this bonded labor issue is concerned in India.